Hello, hello. Thanks for coming in, everyone. I think we're looking for one more. Is Merv going to be joining us? Simon?
I'm not sure actually.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We can kick off regardless. So welcome everyone. Thanks for showing up to this Twitter space or X space on this lovely Friday morning if you're in North America. My name's Clayton. I'm the lead over at UMA Protocol, which is an optimistic oracle. And we just announced our future integration with FORE Protocol, which is going to be launching their prediction market platform along with some other cool things that I'm sure we'll chat about. Would love to intro our guests. I'm just kind of double checking to see if anyone else from their team has joined. Don't see. Yeah, so we have Simon and we have Rick. Um, Rick, hi.
I think we have Merv as well. Hi,
Hi.
Clayton. Merv is on as well.
Hi, Clayton. How are you?
Hey. Nice. Well, so okay, that must be Merv. There we go. Very good. So we got a full house here. I'm actually not sure who Alex Sons is, but welcome. Okay. Also have Gustavo. All right. Very good. So, Simon and Rick and Merv, if you all could maybe tell us in that order what your role is at FORE and what you had for breakfast this morning.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I can start out, and maybe we can knock out the easy question first. And what we had for breakfast this morning, nothing because I typically skip breakfast. But but at any rate, my name is Merv. I'm one of the co-founders of the FORE Protocol, and lead the team here. Really been active in the blockchain and crypto space for an extended period of time, really since about 2014. And through that time, I've kind of been building in the space, and have been active in a variety of capacities. But my professional background is in the private equity and hedge fund worlds. So I came from traditional finance, and really have been very passionate and interested in decentralized technologies for a long time, and so have really been focused on building the space for the last couple of years. Simon, do you want to maybe go next?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, for breakfast, I didn't eat anything. Same as Murph. I'm usually skipping that, so that's out of the way. My name is Simon. I'm a learned software developer from Germany. I'm active in the crypto space since 2017. Work with different projects, from tokenization of real estate over foreign lending, and now working with this lovely team at FORE. And yeah, I'm in charge of the technology and the development there.
Nice to meet you, Simon. Thank you for that. Rick?
So it seems like I'm the only healthy person in here, as I had breakfast this morning. I ate oatmeal with blueberries and banana, uh, all homemade. So I'm Rick. I'm from the Netherlands, and CFO at FORE Protocol, so responsible for our internal finances, but as well as financial flows throughout the protocol, various calculations on it. And while Murph is the mastermind behind it, behind the incentive model, I work closely with our developers to make sure the code also does what we intended to do. So yeah, that's basically my role at FORE.
Right on. Thank you for that, Rick. Appreciate it. Well, wonderful. Um, so I've been a huge fan of prediction markets ever since I learned about them, kind of leaving my college years. And I just find their sort of applications, or at least the hopeful applications of them, once they get sort of mature, of being really interesting, right? You've got public goods things, you've got information, right to know, all kinds of sort of benefits that you can see ripple through the world, at least in theory, when it comes to prediction markets. I don't know that we're quite there yet, and maybe that's why you all are here. But my question, and maybe Merv, you want to kick this off, is like, why prediction markets? what still needs to be built, and what brought you to that? At least that is one of your elements of your platform.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's a great starting point. But I think I'd like to, if I may, start at a level above, which is like, what is a prediction market, right? And how is that different from kind of what currently exists in the marketplace today? Because one of the things that I think we've learned is, it's people are very familiar with traditional kind of contexts of, risk-taking behavior in a variety of forms. But, the definition of prediction market sometimes is sort of lost. So the way that we kind of think about a prediction overall is, it's essentially a wager on a future outcome. So there are really two parts to that. So one part is there's a future outcome, and then there's some, authoritative figure, organization, or entity that sort of determines what the appropriate, what the actual outcome of that event is. And then based on that, there's a transfer of value and whatnot. But that's really at its face value. But when we dig deeper, prediction markets mean and encompass a lot more. And what they encompass is really a wisdom of the crowd. It's essentially a voting mechanism, and it allows people to look at future events and vote on the outcomes that they believe are most likely related to that event. Now, when we kind of take those two pieces together and we look at it, and then we also overlay, smart contracts and decentralized technology, it becomes very clear that not only are smart contracts and decentralization really prime application or prime for this type of application, but also we believe that it furthers the wisdom of the crowd component, which is ultimately, possibly the most valuable part of like a prediction market framework for broader society, or a protocol or whatever. And what I mean by that is, if we have, let's just say, an insurance company or an investment bank or a casino, these are all forms of prediction markets, right? Or providers of prediction markets. But all of that value is basically being aggregated within one centralized entity. And this is essentially the problem that we are trying to solve, is we want to turn the incentive structure upside down in traditional prediction markets. And we essentially want to allow users to create markets related to events that they're passionate about and interested in. And then taking it a step further, allowing them to actually reap the benefits of their interests and of their activity through, through basically this, through a protocol which incentivizes particular activity that is beneficial for the overall community. So that's a really long kind of initial explanation, Clayton, but I think it's important context to kind of understand, how we arrived at the prediction market problem and really kind of our unique take. So now when we get to FORE Protocol, what is FORE Protocol? And we kind of alluded to it here, but what is it? How do the, what are the key kind of features? And then how does UMA kind of fit into this picture? So FORE Protocol is, it's comprised of a couple of different products, but the first of which that we're launching is FORE Predict. FORE Protocol as a whole is really created and we formed FORE Protocol with the intention and the ambition of removing these centralized entities and then distributing in prediction markets, and then distributing the value that otherwise would have gone to these centralized entities to the community that is actually driving that activity. So this is very core to a value that we have, which is around decentralization being an optimal implementation, but decentralization with guardrails. And we have a variety of different features that are intended for decentralization, but then we also have features which are effectively ways to bring in centralization when the decentralized community basically needs let's call it a referee, a tiebreaker, something or a way to manage a dispute related to a particular outcome. This is where that's really kind of what we've been focused on, both internally as a technical team, and then also with our partners, is how do we solve that problem, right? So really our goal is we want to allow users to create markets, participate in markets, and then validate the outcomes of those markets all in a single protocol that is incentivizing users for that activity. But we also need to have certain safeguards. And that's where the UMA partnership comes in. And that's why we're really excited and frankly thrilled to kind of announce that we're working together. First and foremost, we think that the UMA validator network and what you guys have done in the space has it's grown significantly, but above all, it's really struck this balance of decentralization, and it's exactly the type of referee, quote unquote, and a decentralized type of referee that we would want to kind of come in and address any type of disputes that we would have in our protocol. And so this is where we think the power comes in. And I'll pause there, but I think that kind of gives you all a little bit of background in terms of what a prediction market is, what is FORE protocol, and what are the problems that we're trying to solve, and then how it all fits in with the UMA partnership.
Very good, very thorough answer. Appreciate that. Sorry. And what sorts of, you think about this. So you mentioned that it's going to be largely community driven, and obviously community members will have the opportunity to create markets of their interest. What sorts of domains do you imagine FORE focusing on in the beginning, or do you really intend for it to be pretty far reaching across any subject matter people can dream?
Yeah, I think our initial hope is that users will create markets related to a variety of different events and outcomes, but ultimately, and this is sort of true just with statistics, but typically people will kind of gravitate towards particular topics, and then we've also implemented certain technical features like categorization of markets, et cetera, that allow users to organize markets and find markets, in a more effective and easier way. But ultimately, our vision is we want to allow users to make markets on more or less anything, and for other users to participate in that. And with that, that creates a variety of technical challenges, which we've worked really, really hard and are continuing to work hard to implement and improve. But really where we kind of see things as it relates to market creation is we want to provide users with that flexibility, and then we want to create the technical infrastructure to organize, sort, and address that information, and basically make it accessible to a larger group of people. That's one point. And then just a second point before I hand it back to you, Clayton, is users who create markets actually have a monetary upside, and at least in terms of cryptocurrencies and getting compensated and rewarded in ERC20 token. And so for us, what we want to see is users that are essentially thinking about their markets as curated, right? So much in the same way. I mean, I sometimes think about it as YouTube thumbnails. People are curating these YouTube thumbnails to optimize their earning potential, right? And I think of it very much the same way in market creation. So people will want to create the best market possible that's very clear, that has the best details. So an example of that might be a sports game. The example of that might be, what color tie will Donald Trump wear in his mugshot? It could be amongst three friends, which person will reach the end of the driveway first in a foot race, right? And so this is our vision: is how do we create the flexibility, technically and otherwise, for users to do that, and then create ways for to validate those outcomes.
A foot race to the end of the driveway, on-chain betting. It sort of it sort of almost fits in with the hamster racing thing. I like it.
I agree.
My next question maybe this is a Simon question, although anyone can take it. Like, where is the prediction market going to live? Is it going to be on mainnet? And how much of the kind of logic of the protocol is on chain, and how much of it is off chain?
Yeah, well, let me answer there. I mean, we are so currently the status of our project is the following. We are currently, from a smart contract level, we are done for our initial version, the MVP. This is currently in audit with Hacken, so we are actually close to have all that done. And to talk about what data is on chain and what data is off chain. So all the market data is living on chain in the sense that every validation, every prediction, all this data is available on chain. There are a few data points that are off chain, which is, for example, the name of a market or the description, because saving that on the blockchain would be quite expensive. How we do it is that we save this to IPFS, and every market includes the IPFS hash to their data set. So it will be available for everyone, and everyone, if they want, they can sync the full protocol and will always have the market data, the description, and everything, because all is living in a decentralized nature.
Wonderful. Maybe I missed if you answered this part. Which are you launching on an L2 or will it be on mainnet?
Well, I mean, what networks we are launching on, I think that's more a question for Murph.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so the protocol overall has been built to be chain agnostic. Our initial plans are to launch on Arbitrum, but the way that, in terms of the architecture and the way that we've structured, all of our smart contracts and whatnot is, and we've already integrated other chains such as Phantom, Polygon, Ethereum, but our ultimate goal is basically to be able to to work across a variety of blockchains.
Sure. Okay. Very good. Love it. So what sort of timeline are we looking at for kind of like, imagine you're a user listening to this, so a Web3 user, which I am as well. What sort of timeline should people be thinking of in terms of like when they can go create one of these markets or play around with stuff? I know that we're kind of in the pre-launch stage, if that's right.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we're at a really exciting time, both within the FORE Protocol team, but especially kind of looking outwardly, getting our communities more involved in the development process. So I know I see some FORE logos and community members here, some names that look very familiar. So this will be probably some review for some of you, but we've actually have gone through a pretty extensive process to build and test our product with our initial community. So over the course of the last year or so, what we've actually done is we built an MVP and then we released it to our early adopters, and we were like, hey, please give us feedback on this. What do you think? What's working? What isn't working? And we genuinely want that feedback. And this is all part and parcel of the value system of kind of being decentralized, being a goal-oriented team that really is trying to build a product that people want to use, not to build a product that benefits a small number of holders who are early. Like that, to us, there are too many projects like that, and that's not true to decentralization. So where are we in that overall kind of journey, and when can users kind of expect mainnet to be live? So we've built our initial MVP. We've tested that with our community. We've implemented a lot of the the features and changes that the community has suggested, and really prioritizing things like security, usability, things like core features and functionality. We've gone through that process and got the product to a stable point. And I just want to mention that that's quite different from a lot of other operators in the space. Typically, people will go out, they'll do a coin offering, and try to raise money, and then they'll start building. I mean, we built it and then went out to the community and was like, hey, we've done this. What do you guys think? And they're like, okay, we like this, this, and this. These things we would like a lot more if they were changed, and then we make those changes. And then finally, we have been working with Hacken, as Simon mentioned, to do a security audit across all of our smart contracts. And while that's ongoing, I'm really excited to say that we're nearing the tail end of that. I'm not really in a place now to give you guys a firm date, but I would definitely suggest if there are folks here who are interested in learning more about not only the platform, but about the team and about the community and really what we're trying to do. Definitely join our Discord, join our Telegram, follow us here on Twitter. And our token is also live, and that's FORE token, and that's on Uniswap and on MEXC. So get involved in our communities, and definitely keep an eye out for when mainnet is going to be launched, because we're going to be announcing that very soon.
Right on. Thanks for that answer. It's nice to hear the backstory on the kind of the community growth side of things. And while I hadn't come across FORE until we started working together, I did notice, of course, that it's hardly a new project in terms of community sentiment and awareness, and just the number of people that you have interested in what you're building. So I think that'll be a massive boon when you finally launch the live product. One thing that I have learned working with UMA, essentially trying to build a system that evaluates the truth of a statement, is just how messy truth is and how difficult it is to capture a state of reality using words, right? And in such a way that everyone else agrees that those words mean the same thing. All of that stuff is just wacky, and reality can just throw up these very interesting like curveballs, stuff that you never predicted when you first wrote the market, right? How do you sort of see FORE handling those kinds of things? And this is where UMA comes in, of course, because that's where there can be disputes, of course, when that sort of thing happens. But yeah, you're talking about people writing their own markets. Obviously, if it's a free market, there's a certain quality control that'll take place from users evaluating whether they think this is like a good market to participate in, right? So I already heard you mention an element there. But yeah, just curious your take on this generally. Like, we all like to think about prediction markets, think about them telling us about the future, but we don't even realize we're not even agreeing on the same future with a particular phrase until we get there and realize it was different, I always find that quite baffling. How do you think FORE is going to kind of handle the natural language problem of prediction markets?
It's such a great question. And I think that's something that is, like I mentioned, really central to the functionality and what it is that we're trying to solve. So I think about that really at a few different levels. So at one level, as you mentioned, there are markets, right? So, well, let me back up. FORE Protocol is essentially a free market type of system that's decentralized. So when we think about it in that context, and then what becomes important is, what are the incentives that will drive behavior within that market? And then what's the likely behavior what is that behavior that is likely to be, right? So, and then you can think about that at the individual level, and then you can scale that up and think about that at the protocol level. So when I kind of think about that at these various levels, one part of it is there might be a malicious actor who is intentionally trying to create, let's say, markets that are confusing, misleading, or maybe just spam markets, right? So that's like one case. So we would have to have a strategy and a thought process for that. And then the other case is there's actually a genuine actor who maybe is just making a mistake, and it could be a variety of causes for that. It could be a language barrier. It could be both in terms of the market creator, but then the participants as well, right? So these are all things that we have to consider. So the first type of prediction market, like the layman's prediction market, if we kind of think about it that way, would just be essentially a bookie type of structure where there's a single person or entity that's creating markets and then determines what the outcome of that market is, and then dictates it to the participants in that market. There's a lot of risk in that, though, because in that you 100% are relying on that centralized entity for trust. So that's not good. Okay, so if that's not good, what's a better system? Well, what if there's a way where we actually solve that problem with incentives? So that's the track that we've taken, at least at this level. So what we've done is we said, okay, if users have an upside in creating a market that is high quality, the same way that they have an incentive of creating a YouTube video that is high quality, then you're more likely to end up with more high quality content on your platform, right? And I think that's like a pretty logical concept. But that doesn't mean that it's all of it. So the next question is, how do you catch the remainder? And it goes back to incentives. Well, is there a way that we can create an incentive structure for users to basically police the protocol themselves, right? And so what we've done is we created a dispute mechanism where users can raise disputes, and actually they get compensated if that in fact is a valid dispute. And so the way it works, user raises dispute, it goes to, you can think of it as like, the broader community to say, hey, is this market actually shady? Like, should we actually, do we actually need to do something about this? And users are voting with their 721 tokens, so their NFTs, to determine what that actually is. And if an outcome, if a conclusion is not able to be reached at that point, right? So we're continuing to kind of dispute. Then what we've decided is to work with UMA to essentially raise that to a broader set of validators. So that is kind of the tactical answer, but I want to bring it back to the concept here. The concept is actually a pretty simple one. One is you need to have the right incentives. Two is you need to have the right policing mechanisms, but those policing mechanisms only make sense if the decentralized community agrees that they need a referee in this situation. So the way I think of it is like sort of like a UFC fight, right? So it's like you have two people, they agree on a rule set, right? But when that rule set is broken or whatnot, right? They look to the referee. But at the end of the fight, it's the judges that basically are determining the outcome of the fight, right? Unless it's an obvious one. And it's sort of similar, right? And so the way it works here is users can create markets, and of course we hope that that everyone's going to be creating perfect markets, but we're very realistic, and trust me, we have underwritten this very extensively to understand what the different situations are. And then we implement the necessary procedures with a focus on incentives and backups, and decentralization. So hopefully that answers your question, in a succinct way. But it's really those three things that we kind of focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. That does make sense to me. And if I understood you correctly, you're saying that someone can dispute not the proposed resolution to a market, but really just the credibility or quality of a market before the event has actually happened.
Yep, that's right. So the way it works currently is there's a participation period, so which means that the market is open for participation, and then the market then will close for like a dispute period, which allows users to evaluate the outcome, to evaluate that market, and then raise disputes, and then it goes to validation. So if no one raises a dispute, the market will go to validation, then it opens up to the FORE protocol network of validators. But if a dispute is raised, that takes a different kind of like path in the logic tree, if you kind of want to think about it that way. And then in that case, we essentially have these referees, right, that are determining whether or not that market is in fact a good one. And ultimately, we intend to work with UMA to kind of build out that validator network, and really as a last check that is decentralized and independent of the FORE protocol team itself, which we think is really important.
100%. And one thing I'd like to know is what role the token plays in the ecosystem. But it sounds like, I mean, you've already touched on it, right? It sounds like No, actually, sorry. So I know that you have the FORE token, which I imagine is an ERC20, but you just mentioned NFTs. Do you want to just give us an overview of the token, the role of the token, and maybe the economics in the system?
Yeah, and why don't I start out with like a pretty high level answer, and then Simon, if you don't mind jumping in with perhaps some of the technical details, because we've actually taken some pretty unique technical approaches when it comes to how we built the FORE platform. So you're right to mention the FORE token. So there's the FORE token, and there are the validator NFTs, is the best way to think about it. So they're basically these two digital assets that are driving all the activity and underpinning all of the activity on the FORE protocol network. So the FORE token is it allows users to participate in markets, and also there's a very significant deflationary mechanism, which we can get into, but essentially a portion of all of the volume in the entire protocol is burnt. So as the protocol gets more and more traction, more and more activity, we're moving more and more tokens from circulation. So it definitely benefits early adopters and all the folks on the call here. So that's one part of it. And so users are able to use the FORE token to participate in markets and also handle disputes. And we're also looking at some other implementations related to creation of markets and whatnot. Then there are the NFTs. So there are the 721 tokens. Those are validator tokens. And what that means is it allows a user to compound value within that NFT by validating markets. So whenever a market is up for validation, it's in that validation phase, a portion of the total contribution of that market is given to the validators as an incentive, for an appropriate and correct validation. If the user, let's say a bad actor, a malicious actor, is incorrectly validating outcomes, which of course is a very, very important scenario that we have had to think through. Well, in that case, after a certain number of incorrect validations that let's say have resulted in dispute, and upon settlement, that particular validator is consistently on the wrong side of the accurate market, and the wrong side of reality. Well, then there's an economic impact to that validator's NFT. But then the other way it works is users can compound significantly value within these NFTs, and there's a secondary market for it on the FORE protocol itself. So users essentially are able to, from very early days, participate in a deflationary token, which is proportionate, to where the deflation is proportionate to the activity on the protocol. So we are not doing arbitrary burns. It's a native deflationary mechanism, which we think is really important and healthy. And then the other side of it is users are able to compound value within their NFTs by validating markets, and eventually, if you're an early adopter and you can compound significant value within that, and let's just say that eventually there might be an opportunity to maybe trade that for other digital assets, etc. But yeah, we have two core tokens, and right now the ERC20 token can be found on Uniswap and MEXC under the FORE ticker. So that's it.
Cool, thank you. Simon, did you think he left any gaps that you wanted to color in?
No, I would say he did a pretty good job.
Very good.
Simon,
We'll
just
keep him
really,
then.
really quickly, maybe you can just touch upon the architecture of how we're using NFTs across the protocol, and specifically kind of the representation of markets as an NFT, and how the rewards kind of flow to those tokens.
Yeah, I mean, from a smart contract level, every market is its own smart contract. So the moment a user will create a market, they are actually deploying a new contract. The reason for this is to keep the logic relatively simple, and also to allow us to do certain features. Like, for example, every market that is a known smart contract will hold the FORE that is pledged to it, and it will also hold the different NFTs that are used for the validation of this market. Why do we do it? This will allow us more easily to calculate the rewards that go to the different users, as well as punish bad actors if we need to, which I hope will never happen. And since this would usually require people to always do a new approve, which obviously would cost a lot of gas, we thought about this early on and included in our ERC20 also gas list approval. Some people of you might know it from Uniswap, where you do a simple signature and after that you do the real transaction. So we thought about this kind of things as well, and it's all included on a smart contract level.
Yeah, I really appreciate hearing the approve wrapped in as part of a signature instead of a separate transaction. Yeah, those kinds of optimizations make everything a lot more usable. And that kind of brings me to my next question. Well, I have two questions, and we'll probably wrap soon. I do want to make sure we talk about the bigger picture for FORE Protocol. Before we get into that, though, I'm curious how much thought you all have done with regard to like what's going to be the shortest path for a user to participate in a prediction market on FORE. And what I mean by this is like everything we've discussed so far has been very Web3 sort of heavy, right? I mean, it sort of requires you to be pretty familiar with Web3 tools and concepts and have cryptocurrency, et cetera. And maybe that's going to be the way it is in the beginning, right? But just curious what kind of thought you all have put into making the product, accessible essentially to people who might have an interest in the market or possibly have information that they want to leverage. Like what has to be their learning curve to go from only have a bank account with an app, never heard of crypto, to using FORE Protocol?
Yeah, another great question. I think we kind of think about that at two levels, one of which are just general infrastructure challenges in terms of onboarding and offboarding users in the Web3 space broadly. And I think that is a vector to kind of talk about it. And then I think the other vector would be how we kind of think about our particular use case and onboarding people onto the FORE protocol ecosystem. And there's overlap, but I think the more important thing is the first one. So obviously, we're all active participants in Web3. We know the trials and tribulations that that go with onboarding, and it depends on where you are in the world and a variety of kind of idiosyncratic factors like that. But ultimately, the reality is it's a pretty painful experience right now. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. It is improving, and I think it already has improved significantly. But right now, to take a non-native, let's just say non-technical person, like someone who has trouble, like my mom, right? My mom struggles to check her email. My mom is probably not the target market for Web3 broadly. And so I think there's a part of this, which is how do you grow a business which is in a very, very early stage industry, which is where we are all operating. And so I think part of that is the general tools need to get better, right? The wallets need to get better. The onboarding needs to get better. The accounting, and regulations and et cetera need to improve and get better. So overall, I think that we are just operating in a industry that is in its infancy, and it'll continue to kind of improve and solidify in the future. So how does this relate to your question? First is, I think there are certain limitations that we as builders and entrepreneurs in this space just have to work within those confines to find the best solution. And so we're not going to be able to, we are a predictions market provider, right? We are not currently trying to implement and build the next best wallet solution, right? And so that is, to a certain extent, we have to look at the tools that are available and what's being built and worked on, and then and work on those. And that's to some extent how we're building the protocol now. But our long-term perspectives are basically to skate to the puck and try to determine where is this industry going, long term. We think that prediction markets are only going to grow. I mean, when you look at industry size, when you look at growth trajectory of kind of tangential behavior in traditional markets, you look at insurance policies, you look at the size of sports betting markets, the size of turnover in Vegas or Macau. I mean, these are all predictions, right? And so there's a clear demand for that. And there's a clear suboptimal implementation currently in the real world. So you have huge demand and suboptimal implementation because of the centralization and whatnot. So as the overall industry moves toward adoption, and as we move further along the J curve, and when it comes to adoption in Web3, we believe that those tools will get better. And more importantly, we believe that we have to be in a position where we can onboard users from more traditional backgrounds. So long story short, right now we think that to build a scalable and quality business, where in our stage of our life cycle, it's important to grow with your early adopters, and those early adopters are generally going to be content experts. So they have to know what MetaMask is or and whatnot. And if there's someone who maybe is struggling to operate a flip phone, it might not be our target market right now, but we definitely want to be pulling those users in longer term because we think that's a huge growth opportunity.
I really hope my mom uses a flip phone to predict whether like Trump is smiling in his mugshot.
Yeah, there's a saying. It's like whenever you build a product, build it for your mom. And I've got to say, this one, I don't think I really had my mom in mind, but but maybe next time, Mom.
Oh, very good. Well, very, very thorough answer. I appreciate that. You've clearly put a lot of thought into kind of where the business should build and like where it's appropriate to kind of reach out to users, but also just accept that the tooling has to be built up around y'all because you can't just build every single thing. That would be unfeasible. So yeah, very, very thoughtful answer, and I appreciate the hockey metaphor. Both your TradFi background and hockey metaphor will fit in well at UMA since we have a lot of TradFi Canadians on our team. Maybe you could give us an overview, and I'll probably wrap pretty soon, but definitely open to questions, or you can throw out anything you want people to know. But could you give us just a little bigger picture of FORE Protocol, which I've been saying FORE Protocol, I should be saying FORE Predict, because as I understand, the protocol is has larger aspirations than just a prediction market, although I think that's your first target. What is the bigger picture for FORE Protocol?
Yeah. So, and by the way, you're referring to it in the exact right way. I mean, so we think about FORE Protocol, which is kind of the umbrella level, and then FORE Predict as one product as part of that protocol. Where we started this conversation at the beginning of the call was what is a prediction market, right? And what is it ultimately portraying? And what I mentioned earlier was a prediction market is a vote about a future outcome on an event. And so to some degree, the way that we can basically think about FORE Predict is it's aggregating people's votes on real world outcomes. In other words, it's taking information about the real world and it's incentivizing users on the blockchain to take that real world information and then bring it on chain. And so what do I mean by that? Let's say there is I'm an NBA basketball fan. Let's say there's a basketball game that's going to be on, but let's say the blockchain, and I'm going to use the air quotes here, like call it the blockchain, but you guys are all sophisticated users, you know what I mean. But let's just say, the blockchain has no understanding or concept of this game. They don't understand what the Lakers are. Like the blockchain doesn't know what the Lakers are or the Knicks or, the Warriors. It's just it's just numbers, right? And so how do we bring that information about the real world and these outcomes on chain? And that's really what FORE Predict is essentially doing, right? So by users creating markets on activities and events and things that are happening in the real world, they're basically creating an instance of that event that maps to this real world event on the blockchain. Then we have users who are basically voting against each other in opposite, in different forms, and that is a vote that is on the blockchain. So we're basically pulling the real world interpretation of a particular outcome and the votes that of the wisdom of the crowd, and then bringing that onto the blockchain. So why is that valuable? Well, thinking about it at the FORE protocol level, really what we are passionate about and what we are really interested in is decentralized oracles, right? And how do we, work with partners, and how do we build products that ultimately are allowing users to, to validate, particular outcomes, and essentially to be an oracle, themselves, and to be compensated for that. And whereas currently, we have, some great tools, things like Chainlink. I think Chainlink is a great product, et cetera. We, UMA, but I think the key thing that we all need to kind of focus on is not, as operators in this space, is not necessarily, did the price hit a certain, did the price of Bitcoin hit a certain level, right? And then that is centrally, dictated downward to smart contracts, or whatever. Really what we need is a gradient, right? So instead of, did the price reach this level, what percentage of the population thought that the price was going to reach that level? What was the increase, after some event, right? So maybe there was some major, news or event in the midst of a market. How did that change perception? How did that change user behavior, right? And then how do we drive smart contract logic against that? And then now we're starting to talk about FORE protocol. So ultimately, FORE protocol, it's what we are trying to do is to create better gradients of information for Oracle systems that can drive smart contracts. But the first step in us doing that is building FORE Predict, that is allowing users to pull this data on chain. They're incentivized to do so. And then in turn, what we can do is basically wrap that, as well as other products that we have planned and are working on, where we can basically create a decentralized, community-driven Oracle that provides really detailed granularity around not only events and outcome, but also community sentiment. And we don't think that exists currently, and we think that's a really powerful opportunity.
Very interesting. What I love about this framing, and I'd read an article recently that talked a little bit about this idea of not just being a discrete event that you predict, but more like measuring kind of the sentiment, or how an event might affected people's expectations. And then there's even sort of the scenario where an event has already passed, but you're still asking, like, how many people believe that this is the truth of the thing? And then it starts to get really scary to me as a philosophy person, where you're really getting down to this fact that truth about reality really is just consensus. But we don't need to go down that whole rabbit hole. But very cool. I like hearing the kind of the long game about this data going on chain. And it's something that Hart, who's the founder of UMA, I remember him saying to me when I asked him, like why are I forget exactly. I was like, why are we building this thing to put data on chain? Like, why is this important for DeFi and universal market access? And he's like, like the smart contracts are actually fairly easy in the sense that they're computer code. We kind of like know how to write computer code, but the really important thing is getting the real world information on chain so that the code can execute correctly, and so that users can, put money into contracts. Because the irony is that a smart contract without an oracle is quite dumb. right? Because it can't talk about the world at all. So yeah, I like what you're building. It sounds like a nuanced take on oracles, sort of a slightly different approach, right, than Chainlink or even UMA have taken. So yeah, really excited to continue to work together and see what kind of cool stuff comes out of this.
And likewise, I think that our not only are the products that we've been working on and building for an extended period of time really dovetail well together, but I can say pretty confidently in working with the UMA team, it's been great to kind of see a very professional team that has really thought through not only the product but their strategy, and really kind of communicates that and executes that in a great way. So really props to you guys. You have a great community here, and all the community members. I think you guys should be definitely proud of how the team are representing you here, because it's been great to engage with them and work with them. So definitely looking forward to continuing the partnership and continuing to build together. I think we have a lot to do.
Right on, Merv. Simon, Rick, really a pleasure getting to chat with all of you. And I think we're probably good to wrap. Are you good, Merv? Any final comments? Maybe a call to action you want to give for people?
Yeah, all good here. Just want to firstly thank you all for your time. I know everyone's busy and has a lot going on. If you guys want to learn more about our team, and about FORE Protocol as a whole, you can check us out at foreprotocol.io, and have all the information there, including white paper and whatnot. But definitely join our communities, Telegram, Discord. You'll find the links to all those and on the Twitter, or on the website. And above all, yeah, check out our token on MEXC and Uniswap. It's FORE. We have a lot going on, a lot coming down the pipe, and really excited to be launching mainnet very soon. So get involved, and you will definitely be hearing from us and the UMA team more to come.
Rock on. Very, very good call. Fascinating stuff you're building. Yeah, really cool to hear someone who's a team that's clearly thought a lot through this stuff. Yeah, let's go ahead and close. Let people get on with their Friday, and stay tuned for more. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.